Hello, welcome to my studio. My name is Mark Heine. I'm an artist and illustrator from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. I've been a professional artist for 43 years, and I've decided to make a video. I'm doing a Zoom call to myself because I can record it here. Um, I'm in a kind of a unique position because uh, in my 20s, I started teaching illustration courses in Vancouver. I was doing airbrush illustration courses, and uh, and so I've been teaching for a long time. And I'm currently now a professional mentor, doing courses and teaching, and so over time, you get to develop a certain uh, theories and practices. The thing about teaching is that most of the time, as an artist, you're in your studio and you're working away and you're making decisions on a subconscious level, and your painting evolves really without you having to put into words what you're actually doing. And when you're teaching, though, you have to be able to verbalize what you're doing for people to understand. And when you start putting it into words, uh, something that you're doing on a more uh, subliminal level, or not subliminal, uh, less conscious level, I say. Uh, uh, you really start to develop a certain ideas about things. Um, I like I said, I've been a professional artist for 43 years. The first 25 as a illustrator. I worked with I was freelance, but I worked with agents around the world. I had an agent in Philadelphia and Vancouver and San Francisco and Toronto and New York and so I was fed a variety of different types of work. And as an artist, it's quite a challenge to be doing such a wide range of subject matters and things. So it's a good place to start. My father was an artist, and both my sisters, in fact, are artists as well. And we all started out more or less in the same way. We began as fine artists, or sorry, as commercial artists, and eventually worked our way into fine art. And there's a reason for that, and that is when you're in the commercial art industry, doing design work or illustration work or whatever, uh, it doesn't really matter what your name is. It's your um, ability that counts. And if you do good work, people will give you more work. Uh, in the fine art industry, it's a little more uh, about reputation, and reputation takes time to build. And when you're a young person raising a family, you really don't have time to spend building up that reputation in order to support your family. So the commercial business is a good place to start. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you that you know you need to be self-motivating and be in the studio at certain times because clients are going to be calling you at those times. And so you develop a business sense to the world of art, and that carries over into a fine art application. So in my time as an instructor, uh, I I put together a list of uh, I call them elements of painting, and they are things that originally I thought these are things that you should be keeping in your mind at all times while you're working. So you're supposed to be juggling these various different thoughts and keeping them in the back of your mind as you're executing a work and thinking about that. So it's a lot to think about. And so I thought, well, why not just write these things down on a piece of paper and post them on your drawing table? I work on a drawing table. You can see it behind me here. So I taped this list to my drawing table, and that was 43 years ago, and it originally began with 12 points, very boiled down to very simple 12 points to keep in mind as you're working. And as I evolved and my work changed, I kept adding to this list and adding to this list, and so 43 years later, we now have 66 points. Uh, and So I did a video where I kind of went through these 66 different points, because I realized that if I'm telling people a word like contrast or composition or color balance or whatever, depending on what your experience level is, a word can mean something totally different to one person or another based on their experience level. And so I put together a slideshow with examples showing what I'm talking about when I say a specific element, what I mean by that. And I hope that will simplify the process. So I did a video that did all 66 points in a row. It's actually expanded now since I started doing a video. I've done more thinking about it, and so I have more now. Uh, but the video came out way too long. So I'm going to be doing this. I can't really divide it up into a certain number of points, because each one takes a different amount of time to talk about, and some are more important than others, or not more important, they just take longer to explain. So I've decided to divide these videos up into a series of 15-minute sections. So they're manageable chunks, and if I mess one up, I can redo it without having to redo the whole thing. So I've put this together in a video. So I'm going to do a screen share here and start this video I've devised. There we go. Okay. Elements of painting. So there's me in my studio. I work in a ground floor studio. You can see there's not a lot of ceiling height. So I do like to work on large canvases, but I am limited by my ceiling height. Here, this is a fairly large painting. This one is 40 by 60. I thought I'd just explain a little bit about my working system. The stick you can see here, this bar, this is my maul stick, and there's a ball and joint configuration here in the corner that I modified from an iPad mount, and I've attached it to a telescoping paint pole. So you can see there's a junction right there, and I can telescope that pole in or out. So if I'm working on a large canvas, I scope the pole way out, and it gives me a steadying place to hold my hand as I'm working on a wet painting. And like I said, I like to work on a drawing table, just because I like that flat space as opposed to an easel, and I can adjust the table up and down, whatever. I work with a fixed light source from above. These are color balance fluorescents set into the ceiling. They're full spectrum fluorescents. And I'm not using natural light because the natural light changes from one season to the next. So I like to have a fixed light that I can depend on no matter what time of year it is. And on the right-hand side here, you can see my palette system. I use this is a glass sheet over top of a mat board base that has the colors written down for teaching for each space. And that's my sampling palette. I don't mix on this palette, I sample from this palette. My mixing palette here is a styrofoam tray. It's a tray that is recycled from grocery store shopping. So when you buy meat at the grocery store, it comes on a styrofoam tray. I wash those trays and I use those as disposable mixing palettes. And then the whole thing is sitting on what they call a computer monitor base. So it's an adjustable base that you can pull out, move up, down, sideways. So I can, if I've got a big canvas, I can stretch that whole device over and have the palette beside me. If I'm working on the left-hand side of the painting, I don't have to reach way over. So it's an adjustable thing that can be swung out of the way. It can be tipped down. So that works quite well. One of the benefits of having a mixing tray is that when that tray gets full, I can take that tray off, put it aside, get another tray, and start mixing again. Um, and when I have a color that I need to get back to, say if I've uh, come to an edge that's dried out too much and I can't blend the existing color that's there easily, because I play a lot with the softness of edges. I like to work alla prima, so the edges are wet when they meet. Uh, I can go back and find whatever palette that was and sample the paint from that palette. So it keeps all the work or all the paint that I've mixed, it keeps it all accessible. These are water soluble, water mixable Winsor Newton artisan oil colors. And what that is there are a number of benefits, I believe, to it. I find it the perfect hybrid between acrylic and oil. It feels like oil paint. It is oil paint. It feels like oil paint. It has the organic, creamy consistency as opposed to acrylic, which I find quite synthetic and translucent. Uh, it feels like organic oil paint that's creamy, and it's quite opaque. Colors vary. And all it is really is oil paint that has an added emulsifier that breaks down the surface tension. So you can clean it with water is what it is. It's I don't mix water with it. For mixing, if I want to extend the drying time or retard the drying time, I add uh, stand oil to slow the drying time, or you can add accelerants. I rarely add accelerants. Water mixable oil dries slightly faster than traditional oil. It gives you working time depending on the heat in the studio and whether it's summer or winter. You get 3 or 4 days of working time, uh, which is a far cry from acrylic. And so the work stays workable. Each color dries in a different rate. Payne's gray, for instance, is something that I use quite a bit for darks. Uh, I prefer that to black, and it dries. It happens to dry fast compared to the other colors, and so when I'm doing a lot of Payne's gray in the early stages of a painting, I'll mix a little bit of water soluble stand oil, which is basically linseed oil that's been left to stand, so it's thickened, and it slows the drying time um, of the Payne's gray. Um, Titanium white is a very slow drying color in water mixed with oil, so you can add retarders or accelerants if you want to dry them. So they're all available for adjusting the drying time of the work. And one of the nice things about having this system is that at the end of the day, I take that palette and I put it in a box and I put it in the freezer. And the freezer keeps the paint fresh overnight. It actually refreshes the paint. So a sampling palette like that will stay workable for several weeks if it's kept at night in the freezer. So, and I also keep the mixing palettes, the multi several copies of the mixing palettes. I keep those in the freezer too, so the paint stays wet. And if I need to resample a color that I've used in the past, I can access that without having to remix it. So it saves a lot of time, and it also is recycling in terms of the environment. Uh, Also, I have on the side here, I have my brushes mounted. I've just drilled holes in a piece of plywood to have my brushes stored vertically there. I learned this from a pencil artist named Paul Calais. And Paul Kelly had a system where he would sit down and he would sharpen half a dozen pencils and get them to the point that he likes to work at. And then he'd start drawing, and he'd draw and draw. And when a pencil got dull, he'd put it aside, pick up another pencil, and keep drawing. So he would work through all six pencils, not stopping and breaking his concentration to sharpen them. At the end of the six pencils, he would take a break, go get a cup of coffee, sit down and sharpen all the pencils. And so he kept a solid train of thought the whole way through until that break. So I find the same thing works with brushes. I have multiple brushes of the same size. And as I'm working away with a brush and it gets dirty and I can't get and I need to move to a fresher or clean color or something like that, I'll just take that brush and put it aside, pick up another brush and keep going. So I'm not stopping my train of thought and and having to clean the brush. And At the end of the day, I'll know I've had a good day when I've got 30 or 40 brushes to clean. But these are water soluble oils, so into the sink with some soap, wash them out, and they're clean. So it's not really that arduous. Another big advantage to water soluble oils is that you're not constantly exposed to solvents. Oil painting solvents are very poor, very bad for your health. You're constantly working in an atmosphere that has evaporated solvents in it. So you're breathing the stuff all the time. If you're working cleaning your brushes, you're constantly handling solvents, handling rags with solvent, and all that stuff is soaking through your skin. And over time, I've known many artists that used to work in oil. Bob Gann, a well-known Canadian artist, he loved oil painting, but it got so bad, he got allergic to it or hypersensitive to it that he had to stop using oil and switch to acrylic. And he used to tell me that every now and then he'd cheat and do an oil painting just to enjoy the feel of oil. But you know, the nice thing is that the water mixable oil, when you walk into the studio in the morning, it has a little bit of a essence of linseed oil in the air, and that's pretty much your total exposure to it. It makes a big difference if you're not working in a dedicated studio, if you're working in a living room or something where you bring your paints out on occasion. Your whole room is not going to reek of solvent for the next few days because of traditional oil solvents. So water mixable oil, I find, is um, a really good balance. Most of the time, people complain that the color intensity with water mixable is not as good as you can get with traditional oils, and the range of colors is not as available. I find that most of the colors are fine. The synthetic colors, there's Series 1, Series 2 in Winsor Newton. The Series 1 are basically mocks of things like cadmium red, for instance. They'll call it cadmium red hue, which means that it's a chemical reconstruction of what a cadmium red would be, but there's no cadmium red in it. You can buy cadmium red, cadmium yellow, um, uh, cobalts, things like that in the Series 2. They're a lot more or a lot more expensive, but I find that the colors are intense enough that I really only need to augment on occasion with um, cadmium red and uh, sap green for intensity. But the colors are normally quite intense enough, so I don't have a problem with that. There are other brands available. I started out with Winsor Newton Artisan because that was what I started out with, and I became familiar with the consistency. Each brand has a different consistency, and uh, and so it all depends on what you're used to. I've heard that Holbein has a wider range of colors and more saturated colors. They haven't been available where I live until recently, and I bought a few and I've tried a few. They're nice, but they're quite a bit more expensive. So it all depends on what you're after. So I'm just going to go because we're probably approaching 15 minutes here. I'm going to start this this video up, have it on a slideshow here. So let me just pause that. That's the very first, or actually, this is the Painting Bible 2.0 with now 66 different points on it, and you can see that they're in no particular order. These are things, as it says there, things to keep in mind when you're composing and executing a painting. Review the list as you plan the concept. So as you're in your planning stage, and then review again as you're composing and drawing and arranging elements, and deciding on color schemes and things, and then review again as you're working. So these are good things that you kind of want to keep in mind as you're going, and they're in no particular order here. So that's page number one, and move on here, and this is page number two. So I'm going to be going through each of these points and a few more that I've kind of added in a slideshow that begins and it begins in the next video. Thanks for listening. I hope you find it interesting, and tune into Elements Painting number 2, and we'll get working our way through the list. Thanks for watching.